I had no idea that this was even something that someone could do. And
Mhm.
I don't know why more companies don't do this and make a big deal out of it.
That's right. Promo UPFront, money in the pit, the mullet, a full podcast.
Moving on the floor now, babe, you're a bird of paradise. Cherry ice cream smile, I suppose it's very nice. And that's how we're going to start off episode number 202 of the Promo Upfront podcast. A little Rio by the Double Duran. I am one of your hosts, Bill Petrie. With me, as always, let's call him the private of public benefits, the one and only Kirby Hasseman. Kirby, how the Rio are you?
I'm doing well, buddy. It's fun. I always love the little mystery that comes with my name, my title, and I got
Yeah.
nothing on this one, so I'm curious and I'm anxious to hear what that topic brings. But no, I'm doing well, man. Just trying to keep all the plates spinning, just like we often are
Yep.
this time of year. And so, as a quick complete side note, so it's May. And I remember
Mhm.
when my kids were younger that May was like the worst. And it's best and worst. There was all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff going on. And so I have a bunch of people in my life who have kids at that age right now, but I don't. And I'm like, ooh, I remember that season. You know how they say that, oh,
Yeah.
you're going to miss this?
Huh.
Newsflash, I do not. So I'm doing great. How about you, buddy?
Yeah. I'm doing great. Yeah. A lot of people say, well, don't you miss the little things when the kids were younger? And I'm like, I miss like the very small moments. I don't miss the hours of exasperation surrounding said moments.
Yes.
No, I totally get that, and it be getting older,
Mhm.
especially if you have kids, kind of changes the game quite a bit. And
Yeah.
I was, you know what, that kind of got me to thinking, Kirby. We've talked about the fact that BamBams is changing the game in the promotion products industry, and that's factual. But I
Yeah.
don't think we've shed enough light on precisely how BamBams is changing the game. And I have
Okay.
a perfect example, Kirby.
Okay.
And let's talk about advanced customization. Now, I think we know that clients get super excited when you can introduce a higher degree of personalization
Mm,
using variable data. Think
big
about a
time.
gorgeous Igloo 32-ounce tumbler with a client logo on them. Now, that's fantastic in its own right. But when you are able to add individual names on the back, the entire experience is elevated because the merchandise feels as if it were made for that specific individual. Now, Kirby, I know you love to create marketing joy. And isn't this ability to add variable data a great way to achieve exactly that?
It is. And I'll tell you, it's like there are always trends in the industry, and some of them are silly, and some of them are what, like, you roll your eyes. This is my favorite one in a long time. Like
Yeah.
for years, when we got in the industry, a million years ago, they talk
Yeah.
about how personalization would add to an experience, but man, it was hard to do. And not all suppliers were like BamBams, right? And so
Yeah.
now, man, it does take really, really awesome merch to a totally another level. So yeah, I think that's awesome.
Kirby, I couldn't agree more. And even better, and specifically as it relates to changing the game, how about no setup charges for
Ooh.
variable data? Now that's changing the game. And that's exactly what our pals at BamBams are doing. Now, that question is rhetorical, Kirby. If I was asking you a question, I wouldn't want you to answer it because I answered it for you, and so did BamBams. No setup charges on variable data. And that's just one of the ways BamBams is tangibly changing the game in the promotional products industry. Now, go ahead and visit them at bambamsllc.com. Actually, just bambams.com. Let's throw off the LLC. It's just bambams.com. You're not going to be sorry you did. All right, Kirby, you have the upfront section. Before we get to that, I did want to do one quick 30 seconds of clarification on a topic we spoke about last week, which was the ASI and Printing United Alliance, ASI purchasing the events and the media portion of that company in promo marketing and the power meetings. We talked about it last week, and after we spoke, I did hear from my good friend Andy Cohen at ASI, just to clarify, because I had said, you never know with these type of arrangements what's going to happen down the road. And ASI is committed with the staff that they brought over and the assets that brought over. They're keeping the assets 100% separate, and they're going to do that for a long time. They view that as a valuable thing for ASI. and they are 100% committed to the staff that they brought over. So I just, when people take the time to reach out,
Yeah.
I think it's incumbent upon us to share that information. So thank you, Andy, for
Yeah.
A, listening, because now we're up to 4 listeners, and B, reaching out and letting us know, just to clarify that little bit there. So
Yeah. Nicely done.
again, kudos to ASI and
Yeah.
the folks
It's exciting.
United Alliance. Yeah. All right, Kirby, you have the upfront. Let's get right to it. I don't want to waste any more time before we get to the first topic, which is always the promo upfront. You and I alternate that every week. And this is your week to have promo upfront. I had it last week. I'll have it next week. But this week is your week. And I really think it would be poor form if we just dragged our feet and started talking about other things. Let's just get right to it. So, Kirby, without further ado, if you would go ahead and pick the topic of your choosing, go ahead and relay that to not only myself, but the listening audience, the people who are listening right now, and also the people who are going to pre-listen and the people who are going to listen down the road. What is that topic you have for the upfront section of the podcast that we always kick off the podcast with?
Okay. Well done. It's like, it reminds me of Jim Carrey in those movies where he would just take a deep breath and then talk for a long time without taking another breath. That's impressive. Lead
Kirby,
is what is lead.
okay.
Stop. Lead.
Okay.
So you were in Washington, D.C. with a bunch of other volunteers.
Sure was.
We talk about this. There are so many events and in our industry, and some of them bring me like most of them, I'm either going to them or I'm not going to them. And I've made that conscious decision on purpose. That's not a knock
Sure.
on the events that I don't go to or whatever, but I've made that. And so FOMO doesn't hit me too much. But this is one that I'm always like, man, I get excited when I see the folks who are representing our industry in Washington, D.C. So, and I know you were there. So if you don't mind, real quickly, let's talk about
Yep.
LEAD, talk about what it is and, how it went. And I guess maybe like any
Sure.
big takeaways or what the big topic of conversation was.
Yeah. No, thank you for supporting while we're there. I wrote a blog on Monday, kind of asking people, hey, support us while we're there.
Yeah.
What LEAD stands for Legislative Education and Action Day. And what it is a group of volunteers, usually about 65 or so industry professionals, suppliers, distributors, and service providers, along with PPAI staff and our lobbyist in Washington, D.C. that's on the payroll for PPAI. We set appointments are set for us to meet with our congressmen and women and senators from our states, and we go advocate for the promotional products business industry. I always say we are actually advocating for small businesses through the unique lens of branded merchandise, because
Like
what
that.
we do is unique, and what we do, it matters. And so it's something we've done. Like I said, I don't know how long it's been going on. This was my 9th LEAD.
Wow.
It's always really fun to walk the halls of the most powerful nation on the planet. And whether you agree with a certain specific senator or congresswoman or congressman, that goes by the wayside. You're there to really advocate for the value of promotional products. And so the topics were the value of promotional products. That promotional products is a $26 billion a year industry, 98% of which is comprised of small businesses. And so
Yeah.
when I'm sharing a LEAD, I share the story of this wristband I wear. That's my personal story. This is a promotional product for the American Heart Association. For those of you who don't know, my wife suffered sudden cardiac arrest right there in the next room in my house 8 years ago. I had to give her CPR in front of one of my kids. When you suffer sudden cardiac arrest out of the home, 93% of people don't make it.
Right.
And then those people who do, about 87 or 88% of them have either severe physical or mental handicaps. Sandy didn't. She's a miracle. And that wouldn't have happened without the American Heart Association. So I wear this as a reminder of that. And people ask me, why are you wearing that? You're a 54-year-old man wearing a silicone wristband. Don't you think maybe it's time to let that go? And I explain that story, maybe tell it a little more in depth with a little more, passion to it. And we've inspired people, just wearing this has inspired people to not only learn CPR, which is a critical skill to have, but they've acted on it and have been able to save lives. 2 people have done that I know of. And so I'm not going to say promotional product saves life, but this matters. This $1 wristband absolutely matters. And so we talked about that. We talked about the importance of clarifying the rules surrounding independent contractors. The
Yeah.
Department of Labor has a set of rules. It took them 263 pages in January to come up with a set of rules to define what an independent contractor does. And I know this will come as a shock to everybody, but being a government document, a little confusing. So people don't know, we don't have a carve out in that rule like realtors do. In our industry, the people who choose to work as independent contractors are very similar to realtors. A realtor sets their own hours, they set their own commission schedule, and they decide who they are affiliated with. Maybe it's Remax or Century 21. Our promotional products distributors who work as independent contractors do the exact same thing, but we don't have that carve out. And so what our ask there was really if you guys could help define what the rules are, so we know what we're doing. We know we're not getting a carve out. We've advocated and lobbied for that for years. We didn't get it, but we need to define those rules. And you asked about the reception. The reception was great. It was one of the first times I can remember speaking with staff and some of the actual elected officials. What they didn't realize, again, it's the law of unintended consequences, which kind of is what this country seems to be built on these days. They didn't realize the impact this was having to a large number of people in this country in this industry.
Right.
And so very receptive. The other takeaway I always get, and people who go to LEAD the first time, they're amazed. This country is truly run by about 24 and 25-year-old kids. It really is. When you meet with staff, and I posted some pictures, you always take a picture with staff if you can. Some of the brightest people you'll ever speak with, and they are worked to death. They put in 18-hour days on the regular, and they're very informed, but they are the ones that share with their boss, that are elected official, how to vote on certain bills. So they inform them of policy. So it's really amazing. It's always eye-opening to think I'm basically talking to someone who's about my kid's age and they're running the country. And it really is true. I say it with a little bit of tongue in cheek. But we actually got some real great positive reception. Please follow up with us. And can you give us some examples of how the lack of clarity on the rules regarding independent contractors is impacting some people in this area? And so I'm going to work on that with some people. So it's a lot of follow-up. It's so rewarding. And there's something still, if you've never been to Washington, D.C., it is a magical place. Yeah, I know, drain the swamp, and none of us like politics, but you're walking in there, walking around on a beautiful day. It is so inspiring, just that seat of power. And so the responsibility of going to this is not lost on me. And what a lot of people don't realize, PPAI pays for one night in a hotel and dinner. Everything else is on our own. I paid money to fly up there. The people who went up early, so they didn't have to get up early the following day, like especially people from the West Coast, that first night in the hotel was on them. And so this is something not only
Passion
that
project.
it's very much, that's a great word, great phrase, Kirby. So I think I babbled a little bit about this, but
it's good.
and there's opportunities for other people to get involved too. If you Google PPAI LEAD, you can get involved on your local level by sending they have templated emails and letters you can send to your elected officials talking about the same topics we spoke about in person. And you can also get involved on a local level as well. And so the more people we have advocating for the industry, the louder voice we have, the better it is for all of us.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you doing it. And I don't really have anything to add because since I wasn't there and I haven't done it, but I know that you are passionate about it. And every year that it happens, I'm like, God, I'm glad people are doing that. And so thank you to you, but also all the other folks who volunteered as well. So.
Well, and thank you, PPAI. I will tell you, staff did an amazing job this year setting appointments. And I had a great, it was fun too, because you go and you have a good time, and it's a great time. Cool. Hey, Kirby. So I know you're familiar with our good pal Jason Noakes over at Promo Pulse. Well, he asked, I think I mentioned last week, he asked ChatGPT to write a 4-line song with using some testimonials.
That's right.
I'm not singing the song, but I will say it as a bit of poetry. Dan sends AMP, ideas that gleam. Terry and Linda's team supreme. Shannon emails hit the mark. Kim's AMP campaign spark. Manny's customers engage and smile. Becky's orders stretch for a mile. Christine's quick sale is the proof. AMP's impact is through the roof. go see these actual testimonies at promopulse.io/testimonials.
Love it.
Really great product and thing that Jason has developed there. All right, Kirby, are we ready to move on to the next topic du jour?
We are. Let's do it.
So, are we going to talk about PPAI 100 this week, or do we want to wait till the distributor list is out next week? Do we want to use it as a tease?
I like that. Let's do that. Let's wait.
Yeah, so let's talk about the PPAI 100. No, not this week. Okay, Gemline, I
Yes.
think you're familiar with Gemline. They have officially reincorporated as a public benefit corporation. I had never heard of this before at
Same.
all. So this was like a real interesting learning experience for me. So for you, me, and all four of our listeners now,
Yep.
thanks, Andy Cohen. I'm going to explain what this is. So what is a public benefit corporation? The government is essentially recognizing the supplier as a business that is in the public interest. Now, the designation intends to encourage a for-profit organization to be driven more than just making money. A public benefit corporation is legally required to pursue one or more environmental or social purposes. They're expected to operate in the best interest of stakeholders, not just shareholders. The stakeholders include employees, customers, suppliers, and the community in which they operate.
Yep.
Now, they will need to provide a bi-yearly report on the progress of its stated social goals, and Gemline's board of directors is required to include considerations of those social and environmental goals into its fiduciary responsibilities. Now, Kirby, I have thoughts on this, but I feel like I've monopolized this entire podcast, so I'd like you to start us off if you don't mind.
I don't mind. And honestly, I love that you gave the explanation for this because I kind of was the same way. I was like, oh, I'm not sure. Seems like it would be a good thing, but I don't understand it.
Yeah.
So that's really good. The real 10,000-foot view, and this, I think this will tie to our topic next week when we do talk about the PPAI 100,
Sure.
is when stories like this come out about Gemline and their good work. And I think that it inspires me to look at my business differently. And at the end of the day, I think that is high praise, right? Because I think each of us goes into every day with our blinders on, our visor down, and we want to, keep working on what we do. And then when I see something like this, I'm like, ooh, this shows me that we can run a for-profit business but still have the ability to have a mission and a purpose around it. And so that was really my biggest takeaway, was like, I love it when, whether it's a distributor or supplier, like kind of leads the way. They cut down the path to say, hey, this is a way that we've already kind of shown you a little bit of what could be. And that's sort of the thing I took away from this, was like, man, that's really cool from Gemline. And does it, and then, sort of the business case, does it make me want to look at Gemline more? Yeah, it kind of does. And so those are sort of my thoughts.
Yeah, my thoughts kind of mirror yours. I thought, wow, I had no idea that this even existed. I think I said at the top of the topic. I had no idea that this was even something that someone could do. And I don't know why more companies don't do this and make a big deal out of it. I think
Right.
this is such a fantastic way to say, yeah, we're here to make money, because that's what we all need: money to survive. Like
Yep.
it, hate it, love it, I don't care.
Yeah.
We all need money and we all need income to survive. So do companies, individuals, and organizations. But for them to say, hey, but we can do that, we can do that ethically, we can do that with responsibility, we can do that with an eye towards doing good, helping social causes, environmental causes, serving the communities in which we operate. I think it's fantastic. I when I read that, it was one of those very rare headlines that arrested me, because
Yeah.
I'd never heard of a public benefit corporation
Yeah.
before. And so the fact that I don't think you and I are the only ones that had
Right.
never heard of a public benefit corporation before. So to me, I know there are companies like Fairware, like Brand Fuel, that are B Corps.
Yep.
In
We've talked about that.
the process of getting that designation is time consuming and onerous, and there's a lot of checks. But boy, I think this public benefit corporation is a really interesting and cool way to start at least showing we are thinking about this,
Yeah.
and that we're more interested, certainly interested in profit, but we're also interested in making a difference in the community. So I echo everything you just said. I love
Yeah.
it. I
And
absolutely love it.
one of the things that, as you were talking about that, Bill, is it occurred to me that, I talk a lot about goal setting in a bunch of different content that I do. And one of the reasons I like having goals and putting them out there is that it changes the way that you view things. It gives you advanced perspective on, something that you've set intentionally in January,
Yeah.
you might look at differently in February because you've set this as a goal, and it brings it top
Yeah.
of mind. And I think that these kind of things do that from a organizational perspective too. So I think that's cool.
Good stuff. All right, Kirby, do you have another topic you'd like to share with us?
I do. Okay, so gosh, it's been months and months ago. I think it was back when we were in Vegas, actually. We talked about streaming football, right?
Okay. Oh
So
yeah.
remember the playoff game that was
Mm-hmm.
on one of the streaming platforms,
Peacock. It was
and
on
we
Peacock.
were
Yeah.
less than enthused about this,
Mm-hmm.
and talked about that. But Netflix just came out and said that this year's holiday matchups on Christmas Day are going to have a couple games that will stream exclusively on Netflix. Now, they paid $150 million for the privilege of this, and they are guaranteed at least one Christmas game in 25 and 26. If it matters to you, the Chiefs versus the Steelers, Ravens versus the Texans on Christmas Day. And I saw this, and I want to tell on myself a little bit. Like, I was like enraged of the last one because I wanted to watch the game, and I
Yeah.
couldn't, like, even I'm out in Vegas and I couldn't even get in Vegas. I'm like, hey, they have every channel, right?
Right.
And for whatever reason, I saw this and I caught myself going, that's fine. I have Netflix. Like, it didn't
Yep.
make a big deal to me because I didn't feel like it was like, I don't know. I felt like the Peacock thing was, well, now we're trying to get subscribers. It
Right.
just made sense to me, but maybe it was because I already have Netflix and I'm not frustrated by it.
Right.
So I wanted to get your take on this about, I think it's where we're moving, but I wanted to see what you thought about Netflix taking on sports.
So my thought were twofold. Number one, I don't have an issue with it. I actually really didn't have that big of an issue with it when Peacock had one playoff game streaming the Saturday we were in Vegas. If that's how, the NFL is the golden goose. If you can get the NFL, people will watch, especially the playoffs. And so I can't blame a company for saying, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, you could have, the global you could have signed up for a free trial of Peacock and canceled it 4 hours after the game. I mean, that it was not that hard to do that. This is the way it's moving.
Yeah.
And so this doesn't surprise me at all. My takeaway was slightly different. It wasn't about the consumption of the NFL. It was about the fact that the NBA has owned Christmas Day on the sports calendar for a decade, at least.
Yeah.
And now the NFL is saying, well, we really enjoyed when Christmas Day has fallen on a Saturday, a Sunday, or a Monday because we could wedge in a game here and there because that kind of fall right in our normal schedule of things. The Christmas Day this year is on a Wednesday, and they are going to have games on a Wednesday, and they're staking a claim now on Christmas Day. Now, I don't like basketball. I find it horrifically boring sport. So I got zero problem with this. I think it's fantastic, and I think it's smart. Now, hogs get slaughtered, and the NFL is being a little bit of a hog right now. But right now it's still on the incline. I don't know when the decline starts, but I think it's incredibly smart by the NFL. I think it's even smarter by Netflix. $150 million for 2 games on Christmas Day is a bargain for what they're going to reap in terms of exposure and, I would believe, subscriptions.
Yeah, and just as a consumer, I'm excited about it because I don't have a lot of the streaming platforms. I don't have many of them, and Netflix is one I do, and I'm like, oh, and those look like they're going to be pretty good games too. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I'm fired up. So yeah, I a little bit of hypocrisy on my end, so I wanted to at least call myself out.
No, it's like Thanksgiving Day. I love that there's football Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah.
Evening and night. I love it. I'm sorry. I think it's fantastic. All right, Kirby. I know you've been wanting to talk about this for a while, so let's talk about Motley Crue.
Sure.
Now they're a fairly legendary band from the 80s, right? They retired from touring only to come out of retirement. But so what I'm looking at, they've been in the news quite a bit the last year and a half or so.
Okay.
And to me, they're one of those iconic bands of the 80s. When you hear their songs, you hear them, you know who they are instantly, which I think
Yep.
is always a litmus test of, I'm not going to say a great band, but one that's at least in the public conscious.
Mhm.
But they've had a rough couple 18 months or so. They, like I said, they retired from touring only to come out of retirement. Vince Neil, if you've seen any, he's turned into a meme. The guy cannot sing any longer, and he's heavy. I'm just gonna say he
Yep.
doesn't look as svelte as he was. None of us do.
Right.
So no pointing a finger there, but he just doesn't look great in what he's
We're
wearing. He's
wearing
clearly not
different
trying.
clothes. We're wearing different clothes than we used to too.
Right, but he's not, and he's
Yeah.
not. It doesn't appear like there's a lot of effort there, and he really can't sing. They fired one of their founding members in Mick Mars, and replaced him with John Five, who's a great guitarist in his own right, but not an original member. But they fired Nick. Nikki Sixx, allegedly, who's the bass player and mostly the songwriter. Apparently, he's never had his bass parts on an album. It's always been someone else playing. That's come out. All his parts on stage are mimed. That's been, I don't know if it's been proven, but it's been alleged, and it looks fairly accurate. Um, so the reason I'm sharing all this, do all these things tarnish the brand of that band? So I know you're not a huge Motley Crue fan,
I like
but
Motley
when
Crue.
you,
Yeah.
I know, but I know you're not like, I wouldn't say you're a fan, but you're aware and you like some of their
Mhm.
songs, certainly. Does this tarnish the image of the band? Does it tarnish their brand? I've got some thoughts on this. I really want to look at this through the lens of branding more than anything
Yeah.
else. And I've got some
So
thoughts, but if you have some, I will shut my Motley Crue pie hole.
yeah. So it's a great question. I like this. So I would say yes and no. So let me explain. So
Yeah, please.
the reason I say yes and no is I'd say no because I don't think their music was strong. I actually had CDs, and growing up, I liked their
Sure.
music, but they were not like, oh man, they're the people we want to be like, right? Like they didn't have they had a strong reputation as rock and rollers and partiers and all that sort of thing. Um, so in that respect, I'd say no. That being said, the yes side is, yeah. I mean, because it's so, like, I haven't gone to the concerts, and honestly, I thought
Yeah.
about it because it was like Def Leppard and Motley Crue and
Yeah.
some of those. I was like, that would be kind of a trip
Yep.
down memory lane. And every person I know, every single person I know that's gone has gone, oh, Def Leppard was actually really good. Motley Crue was a joke. And so yeah, I think it does tarnish the brand. But I think you see that sometimes when older rock bands, older athletes, older who made an obscene amount of money in a brief window, then pissed it all
Yeah.
away, for lack of a better term, has to come out of retirement in order to make money. Yeah, I think it sometimes does tarnish the brand.
I see. I'm going to go a little further. I think it 1000% tarnishes the brand because for my money, and they were really popular for a pretty defined period of time. Let's call it
Yep.
1984 to 1991. That was their heyday. Okay. Um, and I saw them live then. I saw them live in late 90s, and they were great.
Yeah,
They're
that's the
great.
thing. They
Then
were
I've seen
known
them.
for great live
They
performances. That was part of it, right?
Yeah. And then I saw him, I don't know, about 7, 8 years ago, and it was brutal. The band was pretty good. The band was tight, but you could tell half the stuff was pre-recorded. Vince didn't seem super interested in singing. And like I said, there's a million Vince Neil memes out there where you can't really understand what he's saying. And it does tarnish the band. And then you come out with, well, Nikki Sixx never really played bass on a lot of the albums, and it just, I think it does tarnish the image, especially when they start firing. What's come out is a lot of the tracks live have been pre-recorded, and the only person who is live was Mick Mars,
Right.
and they let that guy go. Now,
Yeah.
John Five, I'm sure, is playing live again. A great guitar player, and this is not against any member or anything like that. It's just I find it very interesting, and I could have easily made this topic about Van Halen. I specifically chose not to. I think Van Halen, now they were popular. So first of all,
A
achieved a
lot
lot
longer.
higher success
Yeah, yeah.
than Motley Crue and a lot longer, but they tarnished their image with the continual silly lead singer changes. So
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting when you look at legacy. And Motley Crue, to me, I don't love the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't really even like the idea of a Hall of Fame. I like the idea of a rock and roll museum. But to me, if you're going to have a Hall of Fame, Motley Crue deserves a place in there because for that moment in time,
Yeah, I agree.
they were wildly popular, wildly influential, and wildly representative of a certain era. But I don't think they get in because of all this silliness that
Yeah.
goes on. And I guess the lesson here is this lack of consistency absolutely throttles their brand. So
Yeah.
let's say Nikki Sixx and all of them get their shit together and start putting on, and Vince Neil starts singing again and does it well. The damage is already done.
Yeah.
I don't know who comes back because the brand has been tarnished.
Yeah. No, I think that's interesting. And, you know, if you watch the movie, The Dirt, which I did, that was something. And, you know,
Yeah.
Nikki Sixx and Vince Neil didn't always get along. And so you just wonder with Vince Neil being taken down, who's leaking the Nikki Sixx. It's just like, it's drama. And so, by the way, that's the other
Yeah.
lesson is drama inside an organization will tear it down every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, and look, back in the 80s, Motley Crue, kind of combined glam and heavy metal and just being filthy. They paved the way for, honestly, Guns N' Roses to me, if you want to look
Yeah.
at the progression of bands. So in a lot of senses, they really changed the game. But when we're in the promotional products industry and we talk about changing the game, we're talking about one company and one company only, and that's our good pals at BamBams. We talked about how important variable data is for advanced customization. Putting names on, individual recipient names on merchandise to really make that connection. A, no one does it better than BamBams. And B, how about no setup charges on that? Yeah, that's changing the game, folks. So head over to BamBams.com. You're not going to be sorry you did. They're going to help you change the game for you and your clients. Kirby, I want to thank you for shouting at the devil, not dealing with the same old situation, and making me feel like Dr. Feelgood today as we record this podcast.
That's right.